All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to this webinar. We're really excited to talk about this subject because we have a lot of clients that come to us that want to open up their kitchen. So this is a very popular topic. We're happy to put this presentation to you. And I just want to introduce myself real quick. My name is Mina Fees. I own Synergy Design and Construction along with Mark, my husband and business partner. He'll introduce himself in a moment. And I'm just really excited to have you guys join us. Our passion is really helping educate and partner with clients and creating homes that they absolutely love every time they walk in the door. And it's our pleasure to be here and be a service to you.
Yeah, and I'm Mark Fees. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Synergy. So I run the day-to-day operations. And Mina and I started our company 12 years ago out of a commitment to help homeowners avoid renovation nightmares. And we're just hoping some of the tips, tricks, and techniques that we're going to share with you as part of this webinar will help you have a successful remodeling project.
Great. And just a couple ground rules before I introduce Emily, who's going to take it from here. We have disabled the chat section, so when you have questions as Emily goes through the main portion of the material, we're going to save all the questions for the end, and then we'll just go ahead and monitor that. So if you have a question that comes up for you, just go ahead and type that in there, and then I'll go ahead and monitor it when we wrap up just the main portion of the information. And there's some materials that you might see that you really love about the webinar, or in the pictures and the after picture, the before and that, or the after pictures that you might have questions about. And we actually have another webinar in a couple weeks. It's going to talk a lot about finishes and how to create a transitional kitchen. So I'll give you a little bit more information at the end of this webinar about that next one coming up. But again, just go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A. And without further ado, I want to introduce Emily Bikl. She is our interior designer. She actually has been with us almost a decade. So she's coming up on 10 years. She's a graduate of Cornell University, and we snatched her up pretty quickly after she graduated, and she's been such a huge contribution to our company from the very beginning. And what Emily is primarily responsible for is the computer-aided design, drawings, construction drawings, the 3D images that you're going to see, as well as all the cabinetry details, the design, ordering them. So she handles a lot within every project that our clients come into contact with. So without further ado, Emily, take it away.
Great, thanks, Mina. Welcome everybody to today's webinar on creating open concept kitchens. Again, I am one of the interior designers here at Synergy. And in addition to all things renovation related, which we all love here at Synergy, I particularly am a self-professed lover of cabinetry in particular. I love how it can work as both an architectural backdrop and a focal feature for a kitchen, so that's one of my loves of kitchens. I also just love working with our clients to help them create beautiful spaces throughout their home, throughout their existing home that they will cherish for many years. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you guys some of the things that we think about when we're developing these exciting new kitchen designs.
Great, thank you, Emily. And just a quick note, I'm going to go ahead and take all of our videos off so you guys can get the full screen view. You don't need to see our little heads, but we'll come back at the end and go to the question and answers for you. So we'll go ahead and pop those off for now.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thanks. So to start us off here, I'm going to go into a quick overview of what we're going to see in the webinar. This webinar is going to be broken down into 3 main sections, and each of them is going to have a couple parts. So each of these sections of the webinar is going to have a case study. There are some general kitchen layouts that we see a lot when we're renovating. And each of these is kind of going to be one of its own case studies. So though each space is always unique and has its own challenges, there are some hallmark design principles that we use a lot that can meet some common design needs. And perhaps you'll recognize a kitchen similar to your own in one of our case studies. With each case study, we will go over the design challenges that are characteristic of some of the kitchens that we see a lot, and we'll talk through things that we think about when we're planning for a new kitchen design. We'll also go over the design features of the new open concepts that we'll show for each case study. And we'll take a look at things like how we lay out the cabinetry, how we create focal points, and how we make sure that the space is functional for working and for traffic flow. So to jump right in, case study number 1. We've called our first case study the small kitchen and formal dining room. Perhaps you have a layout like this in your own home. They are common in colonial style houses a lot of the time. So in this client's home, this is a plan from a client's home in Vienna, Virginia. Their colonial home consisted of several rooms that you typically see, a distinct kitchen and breakfast area, a dining room, a front living room, and an entry in the main area here. The spaces are separated from one another physically, and our clients also didn't love how they were visually separated, especially the kitchen. It's not easily viewed from the entry or from the front room or even from the main dining area. They have this formal dining room there that I showed that was seldom used since it's so separated from the kitchen area. In some people's homes, they might find that they don't even use the dining room at all. You might not even need a separate dining room if you prefer kitchen seating. And then the kitchen itself commonly is cramped back in its own little space and suffers from lack of storage and countertop space, especially when some of that room is breakfast area. And then one thing our clients struggled with that a lot of us might struggle with as well was what to do with their front room. It was furnished as a living area and home office, but just didn't feel quite right because the family spent most of their hangout time in the larger family room at the other end of the home. That was where they always were. So overall, a nice unification of these spaces and good everyday use wasn't really happening because of this segmentation. So visually, a couple befores of this home. Here's the kitchen before, and you can see that it does in fact feel a little cramped. So looking through this doorway, this is when you walk in kind of from the dining area, you can see right off the bat that there are 2 tall things right on either side of you, making space feel tight right from the get-go. And then a lot of the main appliances here are very close to each other, and there's also only one small window. In a couple more, you can see that the cook is kind of hemmed in on all sides by the cabinetry due to this peninsula layout they have in the top picture. And then at the bottom, down at the other end of the kitchen, there's a little table where anybody who wanted to hang out with the cook would congregate, but there's just not a ton of space. In the dining room, this is around the corner from the kitchen. Our clients liked having a dining room, but it seemed so formal because it was cut off from everything else, and it only had a small doorway here, which leads to the hall, which then leads to the kitchen. So really not a great connection happening there. So back to their existing plan that we had here. To solve some of these common problems, we started out by planning on a couple things. First, to remove the wall between the kitchen and the dining room to create one large kitchen. We decided to relocate the main dining room into the front room. Since they wanted to retain a dining room, this was actually a better use of space for this front room. If you have a similar layout and you don't even use the dining room, you could keep the living room and just do away with the dining room altogether. We eliminated some space in this hallway area that was only used for traveling from one place to another, so kind of wasted space. And we created larger openings between the entry in the kitchen and the front room in the kitchen to create a better connection throughout all of these spaces. So after a couple iterations following these general concepts, we landed on our new plan here. It's our new kitchen layout. You can see the expanded kitchen takes up all this area. The original walls that were taken down were these ones showing in gray here. So this was the original kitchen and dining room, and now we have our beautiful new open concept. So with our new wide open kitchen space created from those two, we tried to focus on a couple key principles, which I'll show you here. Creating 2 main focal walls. We have this space now to dedicate one nice big wall to the sink and one nice big wall to the range. These are 2 great anchoring points for a kitchen. We located the tall features of the kitchen, in this case, the refrigerator and the double ovens here, in either in a corner or at the ends of the cabinetry. So this way they're acting as one, anchors for our focal wall, and they're also visually out of the way. So as you can see, when you enter this kitchen, you don't have any tall things blocking your view. So nothing's encroaching on you or encroaching on your work area around the sink or the range. And then by combining the dining room and kitchen, we're able to take advantage of both the windows that were in this room. So the additional natural light makes the space feel brighter, of course, but also makes it feel larger. And here, the window that was originally in the kitchen was actually turned into a door, a glass door, to the existing screen porch, which was a wish list item for our clients. So that was a bonus. And then a couple of the walls in this area were load bearing. So we maintained a good portion of them, but you can see that we expanded a couple of the openings by beefing up the headers here, here, and here. So that's particularly where we removed that coat closet in the foyer, so a nice wide opening there, and where we created this grand entry into the kitchen from the dining area. And then these expanded openings help maximize those sight lines from the other rooms into the kitchen. So to quickly illustrate these changes visually, we have again our befores, the existing dining room and kitchen, two distinct spaces. And then how we reimagined them in 3D, we did some modeling before getting to the final project that we made a reality. So you're able to see in this beautiful after picture that we have those focal walls with the ovens and the fridge serving as nice anchors for those focal walls. We actually added some seating to the kitchen area on the back of the island, which allows more of the family to actually hang out together here in the kitchen. And they're all also out of the way of the cook or cooks in the work zones at the sink or stove, which is key. Again, some befores. Here you see that existing dining room window and the existing kitchen window, and they both seem like such small spaces now until we get to that final product, the bright new open space. So the kitchen sink is now making a great use of that existing dining room window, and there's so much more countertop and more cabinet storage space. The kitchen is lighter, the clients gained that bonus door. And then see how the fridge here at the end of the cabinetry run is located just past the end of the island on the right side. If possible, it's always best to locate your fridge that faces this nice open area, not blocked in by anything. You don't want to try and access it and have your back tight against an island or seating area or peninsula. So we located that beyond the island here for that reason. And another before picture here, right on the right there, you can see their existing fridge before, and it was right against that protruding peninsula. So when you opened these fridge doors, you'd be backing right up against that cabinetry. But now, in our new layout, there's so much additional cabinet space that we didn't even need a peninsula for extra storage. We actually even had a bit of extra space on the right here, which we dedicated to a home desk and organizing area. And then at the far end of the new kitchen here are tall cabinets that serve as their new coat closet to replace that one we took out of the foyer. And the eat and breakfast area of the original kitchen has been converted to a nice open seating area with an armchair, which was a feature our clients really wanted, so they could have this nice open place to relax and enjoy their morning coffee. And one last before, here's the shot of that existing hallway that we took out that was just kind of wasted space, looking down past the kitchen, which is on the right here, and into the existing dining room. Now we've incorporated that hallway space into the new kitchen, and that gave us enough width for a spacious new island. The client's existing built-in pantry was expanded. You can see that here on the left. And so is the doorway between the kitchen and the new dining room now that's in the front room, giving those two spaces a much better connection with each other, which was the main goal. So, as I mentioned, we see this existing small kitchen and formal dining room layout a lot, as we see a lot of the same plans. I'm going to show you here another quick example of how we use the same principles in this case study to open up this main level in a home in Reston. So you see here a very similar dining room in the left picture and the kitchen through the doorway on the right, which is sequestered off on its own. It's almost the same configuration as our previous example. And then after some creative designing, we have this spacious new kitchen that we created by combining those two spaces. Again, we removed that wall that was between the kitchen and the dining room, combined the two. We're using a similar L-shaped layout. So you can see that the kitchen has two main walls of cabinetry and now space for an island as well. We're also able to take advantage of those two great windows from the dining room and from the original kitchen. And then in this kitchen, similarly to the other one, the clients already had a built-in pantry here, which we maintained. And the fridge is around the corner from that on the right. So we don't have any tall cabinetry items encroaching on the workspace or making it feel cramped. And these clients also, again, they wanted to keep their dining room set. So we located it in their front room. It would be off to the right of where the photographer is standing here. Here's another view of the original kitchen. Off to the back left here was where you would enter in from the dining room. So right when you walk in, there's this tall cabinetry pantry blocking your view right in front of you. And there's very little countertop space around the range here, so that makes it feel very cramped. Now we have this expanded room with no visual barriers. So you've got that refrigerator off to the side on the left. And actually on the other side of it, there's another cabinet, which is the first thing you see when you walk in. So the fridge isn't blocking your view right when you walk in. The kitchen still maintains a space for a breakfast table here, actually. So the clients could add that in when they were ready. And then we also redid all of the flooring in this model. And we used this new rich brown stain color throughout both the new kitchen and the new front room, which is their dining room now, which helps unify those two spaces. We see a lot of people eager to change out their existing honey oak flooring that a lot of us have at the same time that they're renovating their kitchens. Maybe you're looking around and seeing the same thing right now. A lot of our clients have that. So I'm going to move on here to our next case study. Case study number 2. For this case study, we'll examine a design challenge that we see a lot in townhomes. This plan is an example from one of our clients with what I'm calling the segmented townhome. So as we know, most townhomes are characterized by a long, narrow floor plan. And similar to our previous case study in the colonial home, this townhome suffers from the same segmentation of rooms. So the kitchen is often secluded in the back or middle of the townhome. In this example, it's near the back. Client's kitchen is near the back. And though it opened onto this nice family room, it was completely secluded from the front rooms of the house, including one that was supposed to be the dining room, which again was never used, and one which was supposed to be the front living room. But it also didn't get used as much because the family tended together in the back. So we have another classic case of underutilized rooms that don't work for the family, and a secluded kitchen which ends up suffering from a lack of storage and counter space. With a couple of befores of this project, you can see, this is from the front rooms of the house. Half of them weren't even furnished because they didn't use them. This is looking into the back. The small doorway shown here on the left is the only opening into the back family room and kitchen, which is where they spend most of their time. In the kitchen itself, you can see that everything's a little squished together. The fridge and range are right next to each other, and the sink is close to the corner, so there's limited space to spread out and work in these areas. And as you walk into the kitchen from the front rooms, you'd be coming right through here on the right here, you can see that this full height wall and the fridge block your view right as you walk in. Another view of the kitchen shows the limited counter space of the range again. They had a small island and it had seating at it, but it backs up to this main walkway through here to the back of the home, so the space gets a little tight between the stools and the sofa. And we also have a built-in pantry here on the left. It's pretty bulky looking, and the stud walls tend to take up a lot of the footprint of the pantry, so you're actually not getting as much storage out of this area as you could. In many of the homes we're looking at, we're tending to replace built-in pantries like this with more efficient cabinetry pantries that can actually store just as much. And finally, looking back into the dining area of this home, this is at the front of the house, we can see some of the support beams in the ceiling, which we had to maintain as we were coming up with our new design concepts. The faux marble pillar that you're seeing here was not load bearing, but parts of the walls around the kitchen were, so we had to come up with some creative ways to maintain support while also trying to open up this whole main level. So here's our existing plan again. To address the goals of the segmented townhouse renovation, we came up with a plan to remove the walls between the kitchen and intended dining area, again, and create one large kitchen out of it. To reorient the new kitchen into a new galley type layout running front to back and absorbing a lot of those areas that were unused. And that would allow us to improve the sight lines between all areas of the house. So the family room will be open to the kitchen, will be open to the dining room, etc. And then the great windows in the front and the back of the home can be taken advantage of from anywhere on the main level. And here's our new plan here. I'll show you this briefly. We essentially doubled the size of the kitchen, you can see here, by demolishing the original separation between the kitchen and dining area, shown here in gray. And you'll see that we end up keeping just a small portion of that wall which we removed, just a small bit right here, in order to have a place for some of the plumbing lines that we relocated when we took down this wall. And there's also a little nub of a wall sticking out, you can see right here between the peninsula and the new dining area, which we retained for support, this support beam here, and which created the visual end of our kitchen, which was nice as well. So in creating this successful new open concept for our townhome kitchen, several of the same design features applied as did for the single family home we saw in the first example. We've got a focal wall, just one in this layout since it's more of a galley style. Here, the range is our main focal point. Anchoring our focal wall, we have the tall items, the double ovens, the refrigerator, the pantry, and an appliance garage. And this is creating some nice symmetry on our focal wall. The sink is in the island, which is our secondary storage and work area. And the island is almost like its own focal point as well. So assuming we have the ability to move the plumbing for the sink into the middle of the space as we had here, this works well because whomever is working at the island, if they're working at the sink, they can look out at the space and interact with the guests. So we have the one focal wall for the range and then kind of the secondary focal sink in the island. And then we are also able to incorporate a bit of seating into this island. So we still have some casual sitting area in addition to the new dining room at the front. And these stools can tuck under the countertop when they're not in use so they don't inhibit the traffic flow. And as I mentioned, we maintained the important load-bearing framing by incorporating some thoughtful ceiling beams into the space. So determining the specifics for these new beams was the work of an engineer, but since we planned for these conditions ahead of time, we were able to make sure that we incorporated them as a nice design feature. And then finally, we also integrated the ductwork from the range hood into our design as well. So you'll see in a moment how we added soffits above the cabinetry in a nice way so that the range hood could be vented to the exterior, which is always preferred if possible. And then for some visuals of these, we've got, again, this was our existing space looking from the front rooms. You can see how we then did a rendering of our proposed design looking from the same angle. And finally, the final product. So now instead of having the kitchen segmented here and the dining room segmented here, we have this open concept where the kitchen is one of, if not the main event of the whole main level. And it's connected nicely with all the other spaces on the main level as well. So again, we went from our cramped before kitchen with its tight work areas to the same angle after. And now we have this nice open space, and it uses the whole main level really so much better. And it gives multiple cooks a better space to function in, even, you know, multiple people at the same time. You can see our focal wall here, of course, anchored by the ovens on the left and the fridge, pantry, and appliance garage on the right. And that was not necessary to create a delineation of space between the kitchen and the dining room, which was over on the right here. Our clients wanted to add a peninsula here just so they could get a little extra cabinetry and extra countertop space. You'll also notice that we retained the soffits here above these taller walnut cabinets. We also retained soffits above the white wall cabinetry here, but we disguised them with these faux wall cabinets at the top here. But these soffits, which we thoughtfully designed, are what is actually allowing us to run that ductwork for the hood out to the back of the house.
Emily, can you talk a little bit more about that soffit, just that it's not all the wall cabinets, or, I mean, they're functioning wall cabinets, but which ones don't function, and kind of the purpose behind that again?
Yeah, sure. So we actually created 2 functional wall cabinets. It's this portion right here, that's one, and then this one here, that's another one. So these 3 panels at the top are actually the faux cabinets. You can see how they line up with the soffits over here. So this is actually where our ductwork is running.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Again, there's that kitchen before. So we're taking a look at the original, we're from the back of the house looking at the kitchen, and you can really see how the space was so closed in before. If you take a look at that fridge, you can actually see that when you open it, again, you'd be backing right up against an island. So you've got this really tight access point again. Now, so much more open, and you can actually see back into the dining room, which is at the front of the house here, right at the back of our picture. And the people in the dining room can actually see those in the family room off to the side here, and they could even see all the way to the back windows. You'll probably notice that we have another tall item in the form of the wall ovens here. It's actually right in the same spot that we had our old built-in pantry. But the great thing about cabinetry versus drywall is that even though this may still be a tall item here, it actually makes the space feel more open. Cabinetry appears to us more like furniture, like a decorative feature of the overall space, whereas walls, like the drywall walls of the pantry, they seem to stop your view and kind of break things up more. And then I mentioned our ceiling design earlier. You can see that we tied the ceiling framing running side to side here in with our soffits above these tall cabinets. And then running front to back, we created a special ceiling cloud, which we made wider than the ceiling beam it's hiding, because we actually wanted to tie the ceiling feature in with the island. So we made them a similar size and shape. Now, instead of having what might have otherwise looked like just crisscross beams everywhere, it looks like a unifying architectural feature. And then the lighting we placed on it helps that ceiling cloud look purposeful as well. And then we've got one more shot. This is looking at the front of the house, the original front rooms of the townhome. There's that faux column again. And thankfully, that faux column is no longer needed. So the original ceiling beam between the middle room and the front room here, we maintained. That was all that we needed in this area. So you can see how bright, really bright this space is compared to the last photo. Now that you get that natural light coming in from both the front and the back windows at the same time. And light can really improve how we feel in the space. So this is one of the biggest noticeable benefits as well to an open concept plan. Okay, now I'm going to move into our third and final case study, the Walden kitchen. Some of you might recognize the features of a Walden kitchen that we address here. Here's a plan of a recent home that we renovated, which was actually a very large townhouse, but you'll see similar layouts in a lot of single family homes as well. Our client loved the size and allocation of her rooms, the kitchen area, the breakfast area, the dining room, and the great room here. But it was the way that the kitchen was sequestered from the rest that really bothered her. So you can see the unique shape of these 45-degree walls that form the kitchen here. It's an otherwise functional layout. It has a lot of cabinetry storage, but the way those full height walls surround it makes it feel a little hemmed in once you're in there. And if you'll notice, there are only two small doorways into the kitchen, one from the dining room here and one coming through from the breakfast room at the back. There's also a pass-through window here. This is actually an opening into the great room, but visually it's not a very large opening. And then the way you have wall cabinets on all the walls of this kitchen, here, all around, and even here as well, surrounding you makes the space feel cramped. So this really wasn't conducive at all, this plan, to the type of entertaining which our client loved to do, which was having a large group of friends over at once. And she wanted them to be able to move around and mingle, but not be cut off from one another, especially if some of them wanted to linger near the kitchen, which is something we all love to do. So visually, you can see here in a couple befores the separation that was happening. Here's a photo looking from the great room into the kitchen. And while the kitchen's open to the breakfast area on the left and there's this pass-through, it really barely does anything to connect this kitchen and great room. And same for the doorway leading into the dining room. And then just a quick note here, you might be wondering about these funny blue squares on the ceiling here. These are places that we actually cut openings into the existing ceiling. We cut them and then patch them back up to do some exploratory surgery, we say, of our existing framing conditions to determine the best way to remove these walls. So you probably all know, if you've watched HGTV, you get those dramatic moments where they open up a wall, they're trying to move things, and they say, oh, I didn't know that was in there, and they find some plumbing or some stuff like that. So that might make for good TV, but that does not make for a good renovation. So we want to get all of that information beforehand. Here's another view of that same doorway into the kitchen from the dining room. And again, this separation kind of makes the kitchen feel like it's sequestered, like it's a old style home where you didn't want guests seeing in and you wanted to close it off. But today, with the kitchen being the heart of the home, you want that connection, and our client wanted all of these spaces to flow into one another. Here you're inside of the kitchen looking out, so you can see how all this wall cabinetry, it's behind us on these two walls and it's in front of us here, makes the kitchen feel hemmed in on all sides. And then the somewhat dated stained maple and dark countertops don't help bring much light and brightness to this kitchen either. So again, our plan for addressing this existing design challenge that we're showing again included the following. So we're actually keeping the kitchen in the same general footprint. This was a little different from our previous case studies. In this example, the size and the storage capacity and even the general functionality of the kitchen are fairly good. It's just the connection to the other rooms that suffers. So to solve that issue, we planned to remove several full height walls and the drywall half wall between the kitchen and the breakfast area to get that open feeling. We had some load bearing points that we had to keep in mind that we determined when we did that exploratory surgery. So when we took out these walls, we identified where we would have to maintain columns to maintain that structural support. But even with the columns having to be in the middle of the space, you'll see that it's going to look a lot lighter and airier and more decorative than with walls. And this home also featured columns in several areas already, so it was kind of an easy tie-in. Although we actually did remove a couple of those excess columns that were already in the home that were not load bearing, these were not load bearing areas, to further open up the main level and make some of these other rooms here and here open to one another as well. So here we've got our new plan. You can see that those separating walls of the kitchen are gone. So a couple of things that we focused on, we've used cabinetry island instead of walls to create that visual delineation between the kitchen and the great room, but make the space seem more open. As I mentioned before, drywall tends to visually close in a space, whereas exposed cabinetry, even if it's in the same layout, feels lighter and more open and doesn't stop your eye as much. And the island is on an angle similar to the original walls, but you can see that it thoughtfully connects our two new support columns here in a symmetrical way. And the space around the new island is more fluid, both visually and physically, so the traffic is flowing more naturally without all those walls and small doorways. And we've got a couple different focal walls in this kitchen because of its unique shape. So we've organized them and given them a hierarchy by, again, grouping the tall items together at one end and allowing the range and the hood to shine on their own wall here. So that's the range and the hood there. And then the sink is in the island again, so it's natural to work at the island and interact with the guests in these other rooms. So briefly, if you remember, here's a view into our kitchen again, from the great room into the kitchen. We then created a new design plan modeling the opened up space that we were planning to create. We did this in our design software. And then we brought this new space to life with a gorgeous open floor plan. So you can see how the cabinetry at the island is a lot less visually impeding than all that drywall we saw before. And in addition to that, when you're able to see the ceiling from the great room into the breakfast room into the kitchen, when you're able to see all of that ceiling, it really makes a big difference in how you perceive the size of the space. So a quick before, again, here's a view of that case opening from the dining room into the kitchen, blocks it right off there. And then in the new design, no more walls, no more case openings. So just the exposed sides of the gorgeous cabinetry and the pretty columns and the back side of the island, which also is doubling as a great place to sit. You can tuck some stools under. Now the range and the hood aren't just a focal point just for the kitchen, but they're a focal point for the whole main level, which is nice. And so is this pretty detail of coffered ceiling that we added in the kitchen since we had some extra ceiling height. Again, a quick before of the kitchen looking out into the great room. Note too that you have this column in between the great room and the dining room, which is on the other side of it, separating those two. And now our light and bright new space. Here is where that column was that I just mentioned that was separating the dining room here from the great room. So we've removed that and now they're more open to each other as well. Now to visually demarcate those spaces, our client just used her existing furniture. So you see that nice table and chairs, and that's kind of forming that visual separation. Now, if our client's book club is gathering in the living area, the guests can always pop right into the kitchen for refreshments as needed without feeling left out. So again, I had mentioned that we tend to see a lot of similar homes in the course of our work, presenting us with similar design challenges. I'm going to show you here another quick example of a Walden kitchen. This is in a single family home now. So again, it's a good size kitchen, but look at all that drywall, which separates it from the living space, which is where the photographer would be standing. We've got a bunch of bar height walls here, this big boxy column in the center, also framed with drywall. And then in our new design for the space, we get rid of all that visual blockage. So again, we're still standing in the living area looking into the new kitchen. In this case, we were able to beef up this supporting header that was across here between the kitchen and the living area so that we could create this wider span and opening. And we were able to relocate the supporting column. This is still load bearing, but we were able to relocate it off to the side here, incorporated with the cabinetry nicely, rather than having it right in the middle. And that gave us space for a nice big island as well. So one other before of this kitchen, this is looking from inside the kitchen now out into the living room. You see how the cabinetry is surrounding us on all sides in this layout. And you've got these 42-inch tall half walls behind the cabinetry that are really contributing to blocking that view. And then there's a teeny island in the center of the existing kitchen, but due to the limited space from all that enclosing cabinetry, it's not really enough island to provide any significant extra storage. Now, in our new design, we've removed a bunch of those 45-degree half walls here. We've relocated our column, and we've got a space for a nice big island in the center, which even is able to include seating. And you'll notice how we gave the range its focal wall again, and the tall refrigerator is in the corner. It's got that nice open space in front of it for access. It's not being blocked by anything. And then where we have cabinetry extending into the space here, it's extending kind of in between the kitchen and living area. There's no half wall behind it, so it's visually more open. And the fact that the cabinetry is kind of connected to this column gives it a visual tie-in. So it's much better than if the column were just kind of floating out there somewhere by itself without being connected to anything. So those are our 3 examples, 3 case studies of common open concept challenges and solutions. To provide a quick little summary here of some helpful concepts from each of them, just things to remember when opening up a kitchen. We want to create focal walls. Shoot for 1 major appliance or sink per focal wall. We saw that in a couple of these plans. You don't want everything to feel too cramped. The island can act as a sort of focal wall as well. It can be a great place for the sink, for example. Move the tall items, the refrigerator, pantry, or wall ovens, out of the way. Don't let them hinder your views, especially your main view upon entering the kitchen. And also try and group them together in the corners or at the ends of cabinetry to anchor your design and to create symmetry. Place the refrigerator in particular in an open area. We saw that in a couple of designs. It's a high-use appliance, as we know, and you don't want someone coming to grab a drink and blocking the traffic flow through the kitchen or getting pinned against an island. So that's something to think about. Consider replacing a built-in pantry with a cabinetry pantry. Not only are drywall framed walls more visually heavy, you can get the same or sometimes more storage capacity and better organized as well in a cabinetry pantry with a smaller footprint. And of course, remember to plan for important considerations such as load-bearing walls and hood venting when you're developing a new design. This can be a toughie for a homeowner, but with the help of a creative and well-prepared design team, we can always find ways to work through any of these challenges to get you the openness that you want. Really create that open concept kitchen of your dreams. So that's it for our presentation today. Thanks.
Awesome, Emily. Really great job. Just get our videos back here so you can see us. Where did I go? Well, you don't need to see me. I can't find myself. There we go. Show self view. But just a reminder, anybody that's on here that wants to ask any questions, if you just go to the Q&A, we'd love to hear from you and answer any specific questions about any of the designs that you saw, anything that you're experiencing in your home. We're here to support you in any way that we can. A typical question that we get a lot of times is, and this kind of goes into cabinetry, but it's also layout. Emily, can you talk a little bit about how much space you really need between a countertop and like in an island, like for walkways when you're looking at changing the footprint?
Sure, yeah, let me grab one of our plans here we can look at as well. So this was from our first case study example. So around this island and these work areas here, this is something we like to focus on because you can get really cramped here if you don't have enough space. There are kind of minimums by code, and to function in a kitchen, 36 inches, 3 feet in a work area between the cabinets would be the minimum, but we really like to go to 3.5 feet, or even sometimes if you have a large oven and you won't want to be pinned against something else behind you, maybe 4 feet. We like to focus on trying to make that 42 inches anywhere that you're going to be walking around an island. to really avoid that cramped feeling.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. We also got a question from Robin that she missed the first project. So, and just wondered if there was a way to see the presentation again. So absolutely, Robin, as soon as we're done, we'll take a little bit of time. We're going to upload the webinar. You'll get a copy of the whole thing so you can check out the front or go through as much of the piece that you'd like to. So you'll have full access to the recording in just a little bit. Thanks for the question. And then, I don't know, Emily or even Mark, do you want to talk a little bit more about how you can figure out if a wall is load bearing or not? Like, what are kind of the things that we look for?
Sure, I can speak a minute to that. It can, depending on the type of home, especially in a single family home, it can be a little tricky. Even though we employ our experts, so one thing that's unique about our company is we employ our carpenters, we still subcontract a professional structural engineer, and they can be independently subcontracted directly by the homeowner. And there's a number of firms. We use a particular firm called Linton Consulting in Sterling, but there's a number of structural engineers in the area. They'll actually make a visit and help the homeowner determine what walls are load bearing and how to efficiently or cost effectively deal with them, because a lot of people think when it's structural, steel has to be used, and it does not. There's a whole host of ways to address opening up load-bearing walls. And then, as Emily alluded to earlier, we're a big proponent, even if a professional engineer is involved, is doing some exploratory surgery. Sometimes it does require cutting holes to see exactly how the original house was framed. And that is regardless if somebody has the existing architectural plans or not, because sometimes the original builders will use the architectural plans as a guide and make modifications on a per home basis, which can make it a little bit more complicated also. So that's one of the advantages of hiring a professional remodeler. We handle all that on our client's behalf, but it is definitely something that a homeowner can tackle on their own, just bringing in the right professionals.
Great. That's awesome. One other thing I'd love for you to touch on too, Emily, a little bit is the soffits that, so many older kitchens have. Is there, I'm assuming, and we see a lot, that people want to remove them, but how do you know how tall to make the cabinets, or, how to make up for that space, or, do you have to have a certain height of ceiling, or just talk a little bit about soffits in general?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a lot of the homes that we see in these existing kitchens, they have soffits, and sometimes there's not even anything in them. So sometimes they just built something on top of the cabinets because they wanted to use shorter cabinets. But sometimes you might have ductwork for your hood inside of those soffits as well. So that's another reason for the exploratory surgery that we do.
Hey,
sorry?
Emily, would you mind pulling up maybe Connie's project and where it shows a soffit? So just so everybody knows what we're talking about.
Yep, sure. Here's a good example.
Yeah.
So this kitchen had soffits above all of the cabinets. And not all of them were used. Maybe you'd have some ductwork running here to the outside of the house, but a lot of this is just not used. And we were able to take those out in this example and take the cabinetry all the way to the ceiling. So that's, if you're able to get rid of soffits and you don't have anything in there, you can locate cabinetry up there. You can use taller cabinets. You could use an extra row of cabinets. If you have tall enough ceilings, you can have a cabinet and then a display above. If you do still need to have some ductwork, there's creative ways that you can hide that. You could use taller cabinets but have the ductwork running through there so it's kind of hidden. You could create faux cabinets at the top, like in the one example that we showed there. Sometimes we leave an open space at top, but a lot of times it's really wanting to go to the ceiling is the nicest look. So we'll do double layers or add some nice details there.
Great. Awesome. And then now coming down from the ceilings, I think, Mark, one thing that I know we get a lot of questions on about is how to deal with the flooring. Do I have to replace all my flooring, or, what are some of the different things that people can do if they're either trying not to have to go through rechanging all the flooring, or what are their options?
Yeah, and one of the challenges we often face is when a homeowner is looking for that open concept, every wall that we remove creates a hole in the floor, basically. So there's a separation between where the original builder ran the flooring to each of those walls that segregate each space. So when we're really trying to create an open concept, it typically necessitates one of two things. Either trying to match the existing flooring and what the industry calls teething in, where you add the existing flooring in planks. It's not a perfect match. You could definitely tell the difference from a wear and tear and sunlight damage perspective, new flooring versus original flooring. And in many cases, the vast majority of our homeowners have chosen that if they're going to renovate their home, they're going to remain in the home long term, meaning 10 or plus years, which means they're more comfortable making the investment in purchasing all new floors so that the so everything blends very well. I should say one other option is to refinish the floors. In other words, some floors are real wood and they can be sanded and refinished. So that's another way to deal with any walls that were coming out, putting raw flooring in and then sanding and refinishing all of the floors so everything blends well. So there's a number of ways to deal with it. It's just trying to find that sweet spot what the homeowner is comfortable with as far as both appearance and cost.
Wonderful. Great. Well, Emily, I just want to thank you again for a great information. Mark, is there anything that you wanted to cover as part of this? Any thoughts that you have?
No, I just really appreciate everybody's time. We're always here to, even if it's just a resource, as I mentioned earlier, Mina and I started the company to help homeowners avoid renovation nightmares. And sometimes that's even if they choose not to use us. We want to be a resource and make sure that homeowners just are completely cared for through the remodeling process. So we just appreciate your time and your consideration of our services.
Yeah, great. And I'll end with one question that we get a lot of, how do I create a transitional kitchen? And what is a transitional kitchen? We hear it a lot out there. And one of the design trends is really creating those in your spaces. And what that is usually people, and you've seen it in some of the before pictures, you know, we have what we call traditional cabinetry. We have a very traditional look to a home, but tastes have changed or tend to change, and people they don't want to go modern. You don't want to go too contemporary and get too cold in the aesthetics, and you also don't want to redo the whole house at one time. So how do you create transitional elements, meaning how do you transition from a traditional to a more clean aesthetic? And that's what our other interior designer, Camille Delou, is going to be talking about in 2 weeks. We're going to be doing another webinar, same Friday at 1 o'clock, May 29th, and it's Design Trends, 5 Easy Steps to Creating a Transitional Style Kitchen. So we're gonna, Camille's gonna take us through how to bring in those elements, and also a lot of examples of, you know, sinks and faucets and ways to bring that in, so you can kind of dig your hands into the materials of some of these design concepts as well. So we hope you will join us for that. We thank you again for your time and attention. We don't take that lightly. And as Mark said, if you have any questions, anything that you want to talk through, just reach out to us. Our website, renovatehappy.com. We're here to serve. And we just thank you for your time today. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye.